Everyone warned me not to get involved, because love between my friend's brother and a stranger is messy. The night Michael met Dustin, rain on brick and hope on his sleeve, I understood. Some hearts recognize home on sight, and the rest of us witness the miracle, breathless and watching. I didn't set out to become the historian of someone else's spark, but that's what happened the night Tasha tugged me through rain toward her brother's first show on Mercer Street. Michael hated attention, which made the whole gallery idea a dare he'd issued to his braver future self. We arrived soaked, laughing, shedding umbrellas like strange sea creatures at the door. Inside, warm light pooled over white walls and photographs of our city's bones. Brick, iron, puddles turned to mirrors. Tasha squeezed my hand. She whispered, "He deserves this." I believed her, though Michael stood near the exit, plotting escape. Michael was Tasha's older brother by 3 years, a meticulous soul who annotated cookbooks and folded his dish towels into perfect thirds. His photographs held that same precision, scaffolding like lace. Rain captured mid-fall, the way neon softened the edges of a midnight street. He watched guests with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Not shy, exactly. Guarded. Tasha nudged me toward the cheese table and murmured stories of forts and the time Michael rescued a stray dog. By the door, wind pushed inside. That's when Dustin stepped through, rain bright and hesitant, like a song unsure of its chorus. His hair clung to his forehead, the color of wet bark. He carried a helmet under one arm and looked embarrassed by the water he was tracking across. The polished floor. Michael noticed first. I watched his shoulders settle, a tiny release, as if the night had finally taken a breath. Dustin drifted toward a photograph of a rusted fire escape, head tilted. He smiled, quick, crooked, full of history he hadn't told us yet. Michael crossed the room, no longer guarding the exit. They met in the hush between conversations. 2 strangers considering the same staircase, and the air changed. "First, time in from the rain?" Michael asked, voice gentler than I'd heard it all night. Dustin laughed, and sound found the beams in the ceiling. "Guilty," he said. "I was on my bike when the sky decided to audition for tragedy." Michael smiled, nodded at the photograph. "That building used to be my bus stop," he said. "I took this while waiting for a ride that never came." Dustin's gaze lingered. "Looks like waiting, but not empty," he said. "Like a held breath." Michael blinked. "You see it?" Dustin shrugged. "I work across the street. I watch people breathe." Later, Tasha would swear she knew the second Dustin spoke. She bumped my shoulder, eyes bright like she'd glimpsed a future calendar flipping pages by itself. I drifted closer, pretending to study captions. Dustin said he cooked nights at a diner around the corner, the one with the patient neon sign. Michael admitted he'd eaten there alone, reading paperbacks, never looking up. They laughed at the coincidence that wasn't. Rain drummed the windows. Someone asked for an artist's statement. Michael deferred and pointed at Dustin instead. "He explained it better," he said, and the room, kindly, let that be enough. After closing, the sky still wept. People hugged Michael, promised articles, contacts, another show. Dustin lingered by the door, helmet back under his arm, as if leaving would break a spell. Tasha introduced us properly, my friend's brother Michael, the rain-streaked stranger Dustin, and we stepped onto Mercer's slick spine. Dustin offered the diner like a confession. "Pie's best after a good storm," he said. Michael looked at Tasha, at me, then at Dustin, and nodded. We walked beneath the city's wet constellations. I sensed the hinge, the beginning. Some stories pick you. Mine started with a brother and a late-night slice. The diner windows glowed like a low moon, and the bell above the door announced us as a small weather system following Dustin in. The neon breathed coffee in patient pulses, and vinyl booths shone with rain-polished light. We shook off our umbrellas, leaving a constellation of droplets trailing to a corner booth. A woman with a silver bun, Marta, by the name tag and the way Dustin's face softened, brought menus we didn't need. "Your strays?" she teased. Him, eyes skipping across Michael's damp curls, Tasha's bright grin, my notebook fingers. Dustin blushed. "Temporary adoptions," he said. "We're here for pie and a thaw." Marta returned with plates like small promises. Cherry that bled ruby, lemon that held sun under a glazed sky, and a pecan that smelled like a harvest story. Tasha stole a cherry, groaned theatrically, and declared citizenship. Michael laughed, the sound loosening his posture. Dustin watched him the way a lighthouse studies the horizon, attentive, steady, hoping. "You take pictures of waiting," Dustin said, lifting his fork. "Bus stops, crosswalks, wet stairs. Do you like patience or do you hate it?" Michael considered. "I grew up thinking patience was proof you were good," he said. "Then I learned it can be a hiding place, so I photograph it until it looks honest again." Dustin nodded, as if this fit snug in a space he'd been keeping warm. "My waiting was dish pits and learning the way steam talks," he said. "The chef taught me to stir soft as an apology. I like that. How heat forgives if you're humble. I felt Tasha glance at me over her cup. Her eyes were the kind that loved beginnings without interrogating them to death. I, on the other hand, kept reminding myself not to meddle. He was my friend's brother, not a plot I could push. Still, the air felt braided with something credible. "What do you want?" Tasha asked Dustin, blunt as ever. "Not for dinner, for your life." Dustin's smile faltered, then rebuilt. "A kitchen with windows. A dog that steals socks. Enough sleep to remember my own face," he said. "Someone who likes quiet joy more than fireworks." He looked at Michael only briefly, but the answer landed where it meant to. Michael traced a circle in condensation. "I want to stop treating my heart like a museum, where everything's behind glass," he said. "Maybe lend pieces out." Marta topped off our coffee and pretended she wasn't listening. Outside, the rain slowed to a lesson in punctuation. Ellipses, then commas, then a clean period. In the booth's reflected city, Michael's profile looked newly unguarded. They traded small histories like postcards. Dustin had a brother he hadn't spoken to since coming out. Michael had an ex who preferred the chase to the staying. They compared burn scars and dark rooms, the merits of apricots, the tyranny of perfect towels. Near closing, Dustin pulled a receipt from his apron pocket and wrote his number, then hesitated, pen hovering. "If you want to borrow something from that museum," he said softly, "you know where to find the librarian." Michael's smile tilted, surprised, relieved. He took the slip like it was delicate and rare. Tasha bumped his shoulder. "No pressure," she said, "which his sister for marry him yesterday." We stood, traded hugs, promised tips and returns. Michael tucked the number into his wallet, then into the inner pocket of his coat, as if practicing the act of safekeeping. "See you after your shift sometime?" he asked. Dustin nodded. "Bring your patience. I'll bring pie." We walked home slowly, the city no longer weeping, just listening. The next night, the city had dried to a hush you could almost hear. Michael perched on my couch with his phone like it might bite, drafting texts he never sent and then finally one he did. "After your shift, if you're not too tired." A beat later, the phone lit. Dustin. Tired is a rumor. Booth near the jukebox? He went alone. I wanted to hover, but love is not a group project, and besides, he's my friend's brother. A person, not an event. Later, pie-sticky napkins and a shy smile in his pocket, he told me the pieces, and I arranged them like photographs on a floor, making their night true in my mind. The diner at 1:47 a.m. is more chapel than restaurant. The light soft, the air washed in coffee and steam. Dustin slid into the booth, hair damp at the edges from a backdoor smoke break he'd already sworn off twice tonight. "Kitchen's winding down," he said. "I can make you staff eggs if you don't judge me." Michael smiled into his water. "I don't judge eggs." Dustin returned with a plate that looked like kindness, soft scrambled with chives, toast that apologized for all the meals you eat standing, a few slices of peach that tasted like July had written them a letter. He set the plate down and, without meaning to, brushed Michael's knuckles. Sparks can be quiet. This one was. They talked in the small seams between last orders and the final mop. Michael asked about burn scars, and Dustin held up a hand like a star chart. "I remember each one," he said. "That one is rosemary and hot oil. This one's a cracked ramekin. That constellation is when I learned not to reach for what's falling." "What are you afraid of?" Michael asked. Then, winced at himself, the too muchness of an honest question. Dustin didn't flinch. "Being told I'm too much," he said, "and ending up with a life that doesn't feel like mine." He glanced at Michael's camera bag. "You?" "Calling my work finished," Michael said, smiling to dull the admission. "And people I love getting tired of the ways I'm careful." Dustin laughed softly. "Careful isn't a sin. It's a spice. Use enough to make meaning, not enough to make fear." He took a breath. "Also, full disclosure, I snore when I'm sick. Some romances light flares, theirs lit lamps. Marta made a show of wiping a distant counter while absolutely not listening." The jukebox blinked a faded promise of songs nobody picked anymore. When the closed sign finally turned, Dustin waved Michael past the counter and into the slow, humming cathedral of stainless steel. "Trade," Dustin said, handing him a towel. "You dry? I'll wash. Tell me what these pictures would sound like if they were songs." So Michael did. He stood in the slip of a world most people never get to see, the back of house where toil becomes tenderness, and named music for scaffolds and sidewalks. Dustin rinsed plates and listened like it. Was a privilege, not a chore. They moved around each other easily for strangers. Careful. Brave. When there was nothing left but a pot soaking and a clock pretending it wasn't 2 hours from dawn, Dustin turned off the noisy lights and left the softer ones on. Steam made. Halos of everything. "I'm trying to stop assuming good things aren't for me," he said, hands damp. "If I'm wrong about that, be gentle." Michael nodded, that precise tilt he has when something important clicks into place. "I am not an expert at beginning," he said, "but I'm trying too." They stepped out into a city that smelled like nickels and bread. The bus stop a block away was the same one from the photograph, stripped of drama by morning. They stood there without waiting for anything, which is a kind of waiting rarely practiced. "Is this one of those museum pieces?" Dustin asked, forehead creasing, smile trying not to run. "On loan," Michael said, "with generous terms." Dustin's breath fogged the air between them. He leaned in like he was offering rather than asking. Their first kiss was the opposite of fireworks. No crack, no sky-tearing, just a warm consent, two steady pulses finding a rhythm. When they parted, they didn't laugh. They just looked, like people who'd discovered the door everyone walks. Michael walked him to the corner where dawn collects. Dustin drew a date on Michael's wrist with a dull Sharpie scavenged from his apron. Tuesday, an arrow, a tiny whisk. "You can wash it off," he said, "but I hope you don't." Back upstairs later, he showed me the ink like proof of weather. Tasha texted a string of knife and heart emojis, then called to say nothing and everything. Be kind to him. Be kind to you. Michael nodded into the phone, the Sharpie mark glinting. In another room, I could feel the city stretching, getting ready to be complicated. That's the thing with borrowed light. It isn't stolen. It's shared. It asks you to stand close enough to see. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it teaches you how not to be afraid of your own glow. The arrow on Michael's wrist survived 2 showers and a nervous sink full of dishes, the whisk still tiny and sure. Tuesday arrived anyway. He paced, then pretended he wasn't pacing, then paced again. Tasha swung by with coffee she didn't drink and advice she couldn't not give. "You're allowed to be happy," she said like a permission slip. To me, a whisper, "Tell him to breathe." But I didn't have to. He already was, in careful, hopeful inches. He told me later about the market, how Dustin met him at the entrance in a denim jacket frayed at the cuffs, hands in pockets, hair behaving like it hadn't decided if it wanted to. "You made it," Dustin said, as if Michael had come from far away, which he had, just not in miles. Stalls leaned heavy with September, the last honest tomatoes, figs like secrets, basil still insisting on summer. Dustin chose with his palms, not his fingers. "Let food offer itself," he said, and Michael nodded as if learning a new kind of politeness. They wandered slow aisles, the city teaching them the names of ripeness. Dustin narrated like a museum docent for sweetness. The cantaloupe that smelled like it knew a lullaby, the sheep's cheese with a flirt of grass, a handful of small peppers that swore they'd behave and wouldn't. He bought a loaf with a crackly cough and a jar of honey so local you could taste the bees commute. A woman with a shy terrier let the dog nose their ankles. The terrier stole Dustin's sock from his tote and ran circles like it had found treasure. Dustin laughed and said, "Someday," and Michael heard the rest of the sentence without needing. It said, Dustin's apartment sat above a tailor's shop that smelled like pressed cotton and patience. Up one flight of crooked stairs into a space full of the kind of quiet that hums. The window above the sink welcomed a square of late afternoon light. A philodendron trailed little green hands toward it. On the sill, a salt cellar, a thrift store, rooster, a postcard of cliffs under impossible birds. "This is the kitchen I want. Almost," Dustin said, unloading the market. "Windows make steam into a choir." He touched things like he was both learning them and promising to be kind. Michael set his camera on the table and didn't reach for it. Dustin watched the not reaching with a small relief. "You can take my picture," he said after a minute. "I just want to look at you while you do it, not through whatever story you think I'm telling." His mouth slanted, wry. "I've been someone's aesthetic before. It tasted like being plated." Michael took a breath. "Then choose the light," he said. "Tell me when. Tell me no. I want the person, not the proof." They cooked. Dustin halved the tomatoes and let them bleed into a bowl with salt, basil torn by hand. He shaved fennel into curls that looked like a new alphabet. He charred the halved peaches in butter and thyme until the house smelled like August changing, its mind. He whisked eggs soft with chives and apologized to nothing. "Stir like you mean it," he said, smiling. "Heat is a good listener." Michael tore the bread into shy hunks, drizzled honey that fell in amber syllables. Steam wrote the windows a letter. The choir sang. Between sizzle and taste, Michael told him about an email from a small collective, an invite to submit for a show on windows and the ways we look out to sea in. "It sounds precious," he said, cringing at his own judgment. Dustin shook his head. "Precious isn't a crime if it's true," he said. "We make meaning all day and sleep like it's nothing. Give the windows their due." They ate standing at the counter because chairs felt too far from joy. Dustin's phone buzzed, face down against the wood. He glanced and went still. A name on the screen can be a weather pattern. "My brother," he said, voice careful like he'd put it down and didn't want it to roll. The message was plain. Mom's birthday Sunday. "You should come, if you want." "I haven't been home since I came out," Dustin said. He left a voicemail that said he needed time. He's always needed time. He set the phone down again, a quiet surrender. "I don't know if this is an invitation or a test." Michael didn't fix the moment. He didn't reach for a speech. He offered something smaller and braver. "Do you want to go?" he asked. "I can go with you, or I can be here when you get back, or we can make soup and pretend the world is only soup." Dustin's laugh was soft and crooked. "Soup sounds divine," he said. "But I think I want to at least want to go. That feels like a start." He lifted his eyes. "Thank you for not deciding for me." They wrote terms on the back of a market receipt, the kind of agreement that makes the Museum of the Heart feel more like a lending library. Dustin dictated, Michael wrote, "If one of us goes quiet, the other asks why before inventing the answer." No vanishing. Pictures only with consent, and consent is revocable like a library book extension. Help is offered, not imposed. On Tuesdays, we remember pie. They signed with a whisk and a camera and a small, earnest heart like teenagers who believe in vows because they do. Later, Dustin stood by the window with a peach half in his palm, light making a gentle geography of his face. He nodded at the camera the way you nod at a friend through a crowd. Michael clicked once. The sound felt like a door politely closing to keep the house warm. He showed Dustin the frame immediately, hands shaking a little. Dustin looked at himself, looking back. "Okay," he said. "That's me." When I saw the print the next day, Michael had stayed up until the chemicals trembled into skin and fruit and window. I understood why he couldn't sleep. Dustin wasn't posed. He was present. The light didn't own him. It met him halfway. It looked like a promise kept without anyone having to swear. On the way out that night, the terrier from the market darted up the stairwell again, triumphant with another sock. "He thinks good things are for him," Dustin said, amused. "Maybe he's right," Michael replied. Lamps, not fireworks, lit the rest of the evening. They washed plates together, the steam still singing. They stood shoulder to shoulder at the window and let the city be complicated. Some loans become gifts, some windows become doors, and some Tuesdays, simple, smudged, blessed, teach you how to walk through. By Sunday morning, the whisk on Michael's wrist was a ghost, a pale arrow pointing somewhere he wasn't sure he could go. He and Dustin stood in my doorway with a pie tin and nerves, like kids who'd rehearsed lines and forgot them at the curb. "We'll be fine," Dustin said, the words trying on courage. "If not, we'll make soup." They drove with the windows cracked, letting September run its cool palms over their faces. Michael kept one hand on the wheel, the other loose and open between them. Dustin rested his fingertips there like a promise without pressure. The radio found a song they both pretended not to know the words to. Halfway over the river, Michael's phone buzzed. An email from the collective. The subject line was a window. He didn't open it. One door at a time. Dustin's mother lived in a house that understood light. She met them on the porch with a dish towel still in her hands, the front door smelling like cinnamon and clean floors. She hugged Dustin in a way that checked his heartbeat and kept it. "You look tired," she said, which his mother for I worried. And then softer, "You look happy." Her eyes flicked to Michael, curious but not cruel. "You must be the museum," she said, then laughed at herself. "I mean the photographer." Michael, relieved, laughed too. Both are fair. Inside, the kitchen windows gathered the afternoon and stored it in bowls. On the counter, a frosted sheet cake with careful roses. Next to it, Dustin's pie. A dark, glossy chorus of cherries under a shy lattice. Voices pooled in corners. His brother hovered, shoulders squared like a man bracing for weather he'd summoned by accident. Dinner made a show of normal. Roast, chicken, green beans, the family salad bowl with its polite scars. Questions took the shape of weather and work. Dustin spoke gently about the diner and the chef who believed in time. Michael spoke when spoken to, offering descriptions instead, of defenses, scaffolds as lace, dark rooms that smell like a quiet storm. Under the table, their knees found each other and stayed. It could have gone worse. It did not always go well. When Michael reached for Dustin's hand during grace, his brother's mouth moved like a misfired gear, then stilled. Dustin's mother didn't miss a beat. "At my table," she said, eyes kind but unarguable. "We hold the hands we love." After cake, his brother asked Dustin to step outside. Michael offered to clear. The porch held its breath. "I got the outside part later." Pie crumbed, retold with the pauses intact. "I said I needed time," his brother began, fingers worrying the rail. "But time isn't a thing you take from other people like that. I used it like a wall. I'm sorry. I was scared of being wrong in front of everyone. That's not an excuse. It's just the fear I picked." His voice went less sure. "I miss you. I want you at birthdays. I don't know how to do this right yet. Will you help me not make you the lesson and me the hero?" Dustin stared at the street like it might offer a script. "I don't need you to be a hero," he said. "I need you to be here. When I'm quiet, ask me why before you write the ending. I'll try to do the same." He took a breath that rearranged him. "We can start with soup." Inside, their father handed Michael a jar of honey, the label handwritten, "Backyard, Wildflower, August." "Bees know their way home," he said, not looking up. It wasn't approval, not like a speech, but it was something with weight. Michael took it carefully, as if a good answer might be hiding under the lid. When they finally got back to the car, the dusk looked like it had waited. Dustin put both hands on the dashboard and laughed. A sound with wet edges, not unhappy. "That was a door," he said. "Not flung open, unlocked." Michael reached into his pocket, pulled out the not-yet-opened email, and held his phone like a coin to flip. "Together?" he asked. Dustin nodded. The acceptance was plain as sunlight. "We love your work. Windows opens in 3 weeks. We hope you'll lend us the way you see." Michael's heart did the museum tilt, then the library undoing. "Lend," he said. "I like that word." Dustin smiled, thumb grazing the back of his hand. "We write the loan terms together," he said. "We choose which pieces leave and which stay home." They brought the leftover birthday cake to the diner because Marta believes in second chances for frosting. I was at our booth, pretending not to wait. Dustin slid in beside Michael and let out a long, honest exhale. "It wasn't fireworks," he said. "But there were lamps." Michael nodded. "Enough to see the steps." We ate cake with coffee and made a list on a napkin that turned into a map. Frames to build, prints to pull, a whisper of a statement that didn't apologize for existing. Tasha texted 10 exclamation points and an address for bubble wrap. The closed sign turned. Marta pretended not to be proud. Outside, the city pressed its face to the glass like a kid, curious and kind. Some doors don't slam. They sigh. Someone's hand finds yours. You walk through. The morning the show opened, a cool breeze got into everything, under frame paper, through sleeves, right into Michael's careful ribs. Tasha arrived with coffee and a pep talk disguised as tape. Dustin showed up with a level and the calm of a man who's burned himself and still trusts heat. "Lower," he said of the bus stop print, stepping back. "Let people meet it, not crane for it." Michael nodded, swallowed, breathed. They'd written the artist's statement at the diner. On a napkin Marta later ironed like a reverent joke. On the wall it read, "Waiting is not a halo. It's a room with windows. You can leave, you can return. Light is borrowed, consensual, shared. Thank you to everyone who taught me to open the blinds." He signed it small like you do when you're learning to take up space without apology. The gallery, a different one this time, wore its title in clean white vinyl, Windows. Inside, glass and paper held their soft choir. Michael didn't bring his camera. I want to be here, he'd told me, not behind a thing. By 6, the room learned everyone's footsteps. People arrived carrying coats and opinions. Tasha orbited like a benevolent comet. I staked out a corner near the peach at the window. Print and watch strangers find themselves in scaffold lace, rain ladders, the closed signs midnight patience. Marta slipped in, still smelling faintly of coffee steam, hair damp from a good sink rinse. "This joint serve pie?" she asked me, then pinched my cheek like a favorite uncle. Dustin's mother found him first. "You look rested," she said. "Mother, for I can breathe." She pressed his fingers, then Michael's, her smile a thoughtful thing. His father stood near the honey on the cheese board and read the label like a prayer he already knew. Dustin's brother arrived late, stayed near the door at first, then migrated, magnet slow, to the photo of hands under dishwater, Michael's only true close-up. "He asked," Dustin told a curious stranger who wondered aloud if it was staged. And I said yes. There were tiny failures, paper that wanted briefly to shrug from a mat, a frame that needed its corner convinced. Dustin fixed them quietly, the way people fix what they love. No flourish, all attention. Michael watched, hands tempted toward worry, then clasped them patient. I saw him remember the receipt they'd taped behind one print like a secret talisman, their loan terms, tiny and brave. A man in a wool coat stopped at the bus stop image and didn't move for a long while. When he finally turned, his eyes were rain bright. "I waited there through a whole decade of myself," he said. "I thought I'd forgotten that particular weather." He bought it, just like that. Michael hesitated. This was the picture that had taught him how to wait without punishing himself for it. Dustin touched the small of his back, an almost imperceptible anchor. "Lend," he murmured. "Not lose." Michael nodded and signed his name, an act of letting go that felt like keeping faith. Not everyone came kind. A woman with a hard haircut looked at the peach portrait and said to Michael, "Ah, a muse." Dustin, standing beside him, smiled, in a way that included himself. "A person, actually," he said, "who likes windows and soup and being asked." The woman blinked, then softened. Because truth delivered without sting has a way of rearranging people. "Then it's a good picture," she said and moved on. More arrivals, the curator, soft-voiced, a trio of students buzzing with theories, Tasha's girlfriend with a plant in a paper bag. "For the kitchen window," she said. We made toasts that weren't speeches. "To lamps," Dustin said, lifting sparkling water. "To lamps," we answered, and I watched the room glow a little on cue. There were quiet pockets. I found Michael standing alone for a breath near the back wall, watching his work watch him. "How is it?" I asked, gentle. He looked at the floor like it might offer a verdict, then up at me. "Like hearing your voice recorded," he said, "and realizing you don't hate it. You recognize it." I bumped his shoulder. "I recognize it too." Near closing, Dustin's brother stepped into Michael's orbit. He kept his hands in his pockets like they weren't sure what to do. "Your windows," he said, nodding at the room. "They make it easier to see my brother." He swallowed. "Soup soon?" Dustin smiled, relief and its neighbor. "Soup soon," he said, and some old, stubborn door in the family house clicked more open. We spilled to the sidewalk when the crowd thinned, a loose bouquet of people who'd chosen the same night to be stubbornly hopeful. Marta corralled us, toward the diner with the gravity of a favorite planet. "After parties need pie," she said. At our booth, we made a mess of crumbs and good intentions. The bus stop Prince buyer sent a photo from his living room, a window within a window, on his wall. Michael stared, that precise tilt, then breathed. "It's good," he said, "seeing my seeing live somewhere else." When the closed sign flipped, the 4 of us, me, Tasha, Michael, Dustin, walked the long way home. We passed the actual bus stop, now unremarkable and wholly in equal measure. We didn't wait. We stood anyway, practicing that rare kind of waiting that isn't for a thing but with a person. Street lamps did what they always do, resisted spectacle, offered enough. I used to think stories needed fireworks to count, Dustin said into the clean night. But I want this. Lamps, Tuesdays, windows. Michael took his hand. The museum is lending pieces to a good home, he said, smiling. Generous terms, Dustin answered, squeezing. Back upstairs, in the soft domestic hush that follows loud joy, Michael taped the show postcard inside the kitchen cabinet where he keeps the good mugs. Dustin tucked the plant onto the sill. Steam from the kettle rose and wrote its small, vanishing letter. We didn't say miracle out loud. We didn't need to. Everyone warned me not to get involved because love between my friend's brother and a stranger is messy. Maybe they were right about the mess and wrong about the warning. Some nights, if you stand close enough to borrowed light, it teaches you how to glow. Some hearts recognize home on sight. The rest of us learn to witness. Hands open, breath. Steady, lamps lit, windows open. If this story lit a lamp in you, subscribe, like, comment, and share to spread the borrowed light.